The BMW R1300GS is a bike that might just redefine what we expect from a motorcycle. It is packed with cutting-edge technology, but still has the iconic flat twin boxer engine that was first used over 100 years ago. But here's the twist. Because it's so packed with refinement and tech, can you argue that it's lost the soul of its predecessors?
Well, first up for me is the engine. It's incredibly smooth and it delivers 145 horsepower at 7,700 RPM, something like that.
7,750 RPM. Engine, for me, is one of the main highlights on this bike.
Oh yeah.
It's rapid, heaps of torque, 149 Newton meters of torque at 6,500 RPM. Boxer engines are known for their torque, so that's really no great surprise. For me, it feels, nearly like a sports bike. I think it's quite a step up from the 1250. The other thing about the engine is the shift cam. Now, it's apparently very efficient at 4.8 litres per 100 kilometres.
Yeah, wow.
I didn't quite get that. According to the Trip computer, I was getting about 5.3 litres per 100 Ks.
Not bad for a 1.3 litre engine.
This is the thing. It's still incredible fuel economy, and I think it'll give you still such great range out of the 19 litre tank. So we had two versions of the bike on review. You rode both of them.
I did.
I only rode the Option 719.
Yep.
The triple black, I thought it looked fine. But I love the colourway of the Option 719. It looks superb. Really great attention to detail. Beautiful gold wheels. Love the green colour. Love the little Option 719 logos.
Yep.
Superb.
Yeah, really, really well thought out colourway. Looks great.
The finish of this bike is superb, and one of the things we both really liked was the finish of the rocker cover and the frame.
Yeah, it's a really nice matte black finish, and it just really makes the bike pop and look that extra bit special. I think the fit and finish overall, even to link back to what you were saying before with the little 719 decals, they've really, really thought about the styling on this bike.
Absolutely. The cylinders are a lot more in line with each other.
Yeah.
Because of the way the crank's working. The other thing I like is it's symmetrical. So the old GS with that asymmetrical headlight, I didn't like that. Thought it looked a bit ugly. I actually really like the cross light on this one.
Yeah.
Looks great. It's also quite functional too because it's very visible. That headlight is very visible from the sides.
Yeah.
It's not just directly in front. You can see it if you're out to the side of the bike. You can see that headlight quite clearly. I thought that looked great.
Okay, so next up is the weight. It's 237 kilos, that's its wet weight. And once you get moving, it's very light and agile.
But that's very typical of a boxer engine.
Yeah.
Boxer bikes, they don't feel, the weight's so low down, you just don't feel it. At 237 kilos, it's actually down a little bit on weight compared to the old version, which probably adds to that feeling of it being a little bit more sprightly than the older 1250 version. So the weight of the bike, no issue when you're moving. It's a little bit heavy when you're moving it around the garage, but nothing major.
Yeah, even low speed, with use of the rear brake, it still feels nice and centered. It's not tipping over.
It feels planted, completely planted. So yeah, the weight of the bike is no issue at all for me, but I've never had an issue with the weight of pretty much any boxer I've ridden. This one, it feels a lot slimmer than the 1250 bikes. It really feels quite narrow. Now, you didn't ride it, but it feels very similar to the Moto Guzzi V100S Mandello.
I'm so jealous. In
terms of it being a long bike, and it doesn't feel as busy and intimidating as the 1250 GS. So that's another big thumbs up for me, is that the fact that it's a long, sleeker looking GS.
Yep.
So the other thing we like about this bike is the electronics, and they're industry-leading electronics, starting with the adaptive ride height, which, as you're coming into a stop, the bike just lowers. That was brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Dynamic semi-active suspension, which varies the damping and spring rate of both shocks.
Yeah.
So, that's just working in the background, which was, I found that absolutely brilliant. What was the next thing you liked in terms of the tech?
Oh, well, definitely the radar guided cruise
control. How good was that?
So good. And in a very non-German way, it only has 3 settings, 3 presets for distance on the radar cruise.
Yep.
Number 1 is really, really close.
Yep.
Too close for my comfort. Number 2 is perfect, and number 3 is nice and laid back for some of the expected demographic that buy a GS, let's say.
I think I pretty much left it. I'm probably in that demographic. I left it in the second setting pretty much the whole time I was using it.
When you want to pin it off the line, the quick shifter is faultless. And the only thing I found, and this was just an adaptive thing for me, if you telegraph what you're going to do using your foot on the shifter and you take just like half a second longer, even commuting, it's perfect.
Yep.
But if you're bang up, bang down through the gears, the computer has no idea what's going on. It can't see the traffic in front of you. So that's probably a top tip from me. Just telegraph what you're going to do very nice and, obviously, and the quick shifter is almost faultless.
So it's got tyre pressure control, a dynamic brake light. It's got the beautiful big TFT, lane keep assist, LED headlights, heated grips, heated seats. Tegan would love it. LED turn indicators and the handguards, as well as LED daytime running lights, the quick shifter as we mentioned, and a stack of rider modes, and it's keyless.
Now, something that we want to disclose is that not all of the tech that we've just spoken about is standard. And let's be honest, there was so much tech, it's kind of hard to see what's there as standard and what isn't. But if you're really curious about it, just check the BMW website and cross-reference.
Probably my main like about this bike, and it's something that BMW do very, very well, is the suspension. It's got the paralever suspension on the back and the telelever on the front. It's soft when you need it to be, it's firm when you need it to be. The telelever suspension in particular, you can wrap on those brakes in a bend, and mate, the bike does not, it's not bothered at all.
It doesn't
dip, it doesn't dive. BMW, I said it before, just they do things a little bit differently. And the telelever is one of my main highlights on this bike, and it's something that I think a lot of other manufacturers can learn from.
Yeah, and I think this is something you said earlier. It just does it in the background. You don't have to think about it. When you slam on the brakes and it doesn't dip, you didn't have to plan for that. It just does it.
The other thing is that using that telelever suspension, it makes this bike very different from every other bike in this category that has traditional telescopic forks. So for me, that's a massive selling point on a bike like this. You know, every other bike's gone telescopic. BMW, in typical BMW way, let's do stuff a bit differently.
Yep, a bit German.
They use the telelever, and it's brilliant. It's a comfortable all-day tourer. You could literally ride this thing all day. So the GS has always been known as a great all-round bike, and this one's just really taking it to the next level.
Yeah, for sure.
You found it comfortable?
As a rider, I found it incredibly comfortable, and I think they've really thought out the touring capabilities, particularly the powered pannier bag slot.
Yeah, really nice. Yeah.
You can have a fridge on the back of this thing, and it's powered by the bike. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, pretty cool. And I think it's all central locking on the bags as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
The TFT, I thought it was nice and big. I thought that it was easy to control with that wheel. I'm used to using that wheel because I had an R1200 which had the same one. No issue for me whatsoever. And nice big TFT, very clear, lots of information in there. I will say you probably need to read the manual to go through and just work out what is actually there. But it's the sort of bike that you set it up the way you want it and you're done.
So overall, this is a well thought out, pinnacle of engineering, competent motorcycle, and we both love it.
Very German.
Oh yeah, too German.
Oh, is it too German? I don't know if it's too German. Anyway. So my first thing that I wasn't a massive fan of, it sounds like a Boxer, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a Boxer. Because that engine is so smooth. So it just loses a little bit of character.
So you're actually complaining that it's too refined.
Look, it's not necessarily a bad thing. The engine is brilliant. I love the Boxer wobble, and it's something that that this bike doesn't have.
One of the things that frustrated me is that I looked down at the instrument cluster and there's no fuel gauge.
So basically there's I think it's the menu button. If you hit up, the very top then adjusts the fuel gauge on the top, and you can have range and fuel gauge and a few things. It's kind of tricky to find, but once you get used to it and you know it's there, that's how you get to that fuel gauge. One thing we both didn't like is that bloody nav holder.
It's such an eyesore, and it's so redundant.
I've spoken to a lot of guys who have the old Nav 6, I think it is, and they do use that over the BMW app, which is ordinary. I would rather see this bike without the nav holder, and then if you've got the Nav 6 and you want to add it on. But just having a nav holder sitting there, when you haven't got the navigator to put on it, it just looks ugly. Now, the electronic screen, I thought the height of it was good. For me, nice that it was adjustable with a button, it just pops up. For me, absolutely perfect. For you, it was a little bit short, is that right?
Yeah, like literally 5 centimeters too short. It was really frustrating because if I just drop my shoulders by, less than 5 centimeters, all the wind goes over my head, but if I sit up straight, it hits me right in the forehead. So I just wish it would lift a tiny, tiny, tiny bit more.
Keep in mind though, what are you, 6'5", 6'6"?
Yeah, somewhere between there.
Yeah, so I mean, you're a lot taller than the average human being. For me, at about 5'9", no dramas at all.
One of the things that I found really annoying is that to turn the fog lights on, you had to go into settings, my vehicle, additional lighting, fog lights turn on, back. Now your fog lights are on, and then if you want to turn them off, you have to go back into the menu and turn them off. And I know you can program a button to turn them on, but I wish they had the option to turn the fog lights on in conjunction with your high beam. But that's not an option, which seems like an oversight for such a otherwise well thought out bike.
It is heavy off-road. Now, I'm not a massive fan. I don't do a lot of off-road riding, and I'd be very nervous taking a big bike like this off-road.
Yeah.
Particularly a big bike that's not mine.
Yeah.
Particularly a big bike that's
exactly,
not mine that costs over 40 grand.
Yeah,
so,
same.
But I'm sure if you're a confident off-road rider, you're going to do some and who does a lot of serious adventure riding, you're going to love this.
I want to jump in here and talk about tires, because you only got a chance to ride the 80/20 719 tires,
which is the one that I did take off road, and I was like, "Oh, this is not great."
Yeah, it's a bit hairy.
Yeah.
Now, the triple black was okay on road. The tires were very telegraphed and would tell you when they're
So
about
what
to
tires were on the triple black?
They were 50/50s.
Okay.
Off-road, the 50/50s gripped up nicely, but
Yep.
you needed to steer with the throttle, which is, nothing unexpected. But again, when you're riding someone else's $40,000 bike and you've got, 230 kilos under your ass?
237, something like that.
It gets a bit daunting.
If you do a lot of adventure riding, it's not going to be an issue. But me, I'm predominantly a road rider. So if I'm going to buy an adventure bike, it's going to be something like the Himalayan.
Yeah, I didn't see you jumping this one.
Didn't jump this one at all. The main thumbs down. And we know why it costs what it does, but it's the price. That's a lot of money for a bike.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Yeah, it probably is, because there's so much tech in there.
Yeah.
But that's probably the main thing, is that the price it's right up there.
Now, this GS is a great tourer, and for 90% of my experience riding it, I didn't have a problem until I put someone on the back seat.
Yeah, right.
They were slipping and sliding all over the back seat, and I just figured they didn't have experience with a motorcycle, and it must be their fault. So I put a great friend of mine on the back. He's been riding motorbikes since he was 5, and he could not sit still. He's sliding around, and then he's slide into me, and then I slide right into the tank, and goodbye future generations of Lucas.
Which with a mullet like that's probably a good thing.
Well, the only comfortable way for a pillion to ride, in my experience, was for them to hold the sissy bar.
Yeah, right.
But then if you're cornering at speed, it feels like this big cumbersome weight on the back. I mean, I'd much rather have them just hang on to me. So that really shocked me.
I absolutely loved it. It's got the best suspension on a bike I think I've ever had.
Yep.
The engine's great. The electronics are everything you'd expect. So for me, it's a 9.5. It's the same as the Moto Guzzi V100S Mandello. I could tour on it. It's not so big that you can't use it as a commuter, because it doesn't feel as wide as the older version. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. 9.5 for me.
Now, I really struggled to give this a score out of 10, because the tech is amazing, the power is amazing, the styling, it's good. It is a little bit wide, so lane filtering is sometimes a bit challenging, but it's still doable. And if you're only going to buy one bike and you have the budget, you'd be stupid not to get this. But soul-wise, it just feels like two wheels and an engine. There's no spirit of the bike there. It doesn't really compel me to get on and have fun. It's very far off an old, crusty, oil-leaking shitbox, which I predominantly ride.
And own.
Yeah. I give this a hesitant 8. I think the tech is great. I think it's a very, very competent bike, but would I own one? Probably not.
So I'm going to push back a little bit there, because I think it's an absolutely brilliant bike. It does exactly what it says on the box. The electronics are superb. The engine is superb. The suspension is superb. People tend to be nitpicking over things that, I don't know, like why are we nitpicking over a menu function and all that sort of stuff. The thing handles like a sports bike.
It does, yeah.
It rides like a sports bike. Has it lost a bit of its soul? Yeah, it probably has. But it makes up for it in so many other ways. Is it worth upgrading from an R1300GS or an R1250GS?
Tell me.
I'm actually not sure that it is.
Okay.
Because they are both still absolutely brilliant bikes. But if you're in the market for a new bike and you don't have one of those, then this is definitely the bike to go for.
And this is a little bit better than the 1200 or 1250 you said, but
I think it's a lot better than the 1200.
Okay.
I think it's and the 1250 was a big step up from the 1200. They're both still great bikes.
Yeah.
I had an R1200R. I regret selling that bike because it was just the most functional, best all-round bike I've ever owned. And the R1300GS, I think that's the one. if you're buying a bike now to do a bit of adventure touring or touring 1-up, not 2-up touring, then this is the one to go for, but only in the Option 719 colour scheme. So BMW practically invented adventure touring way back with the original GS. Check out this video over here with the rider story we did with Jeff, who has ridden his GS on pretty much every continent.